Rand Paul makes announcements that are going to influence this election in a number of ways. He's dive bombing Nikki Haley because no one wants to touch the entitlements and we're going to go insolvent. But the biggest one is our foreign spending, including how Biden intends to spend it on the border. Welcome to Doug in Exile. Let's go to Rand Paul.
You know, I think Biden's actions speak louder than words. The Biden administration, as we speak, are down there cutting the barriers. They're cutting the barbed wire, the razor wire. They're removing the cargo containers that are blocking the border. So all of the things that are trying to stop people from coming in, the Biden administration is removing. So I think that sort of gives the lie to the negotiations that somehow legislation will allow them to do something about the border. The president has the power under current law to stop this if he wants, but the president would have to have the willpower, and this president doesn't have the willpower. In fact, this president is doing the opposite, trying to make it easier for people to come across. So I don't suspect it's going to get better.
So this is the biggest way that he completely demolishes the Biden administration, and this does affect the election. Biden's going to lose this election on the border. Trump has to run on it and run on it hard and run it into the ground.
Yeah, and realize the bill is going to have more money for sanctuary cities. So the cities that don't turn anybody in, you can rape, murder, pillage in some of these sanctuary cities, and if you're illegally here, they don't do anything about you. You just fade back into the woodwork.
But the other big picture is, why are we spending all of our money all around the world? This comes with a slight caveat because Rand Paul expresses sadness about people who live in other countries, right? They need money. But at some point, you have to cut them off. You have to take care of your own citizens. It's not our job to do that. So I disagree with him on the compassion side.
But I don't think we should always have to pay for everything. When do we become the sugar daddy of the world? We got to pay for everything.
We lose our strength as we spread our resources too far out around the world. Meanwhile, we're hemorrhaging and losing liberties at home, even liberties like free speech.
Is that we think less intervention. We should have a strong national defense to respond when attacked. And so the Houthis, I would respond with strength because we've been attacked by them. We can't allow international shipping or our ships to be attacked. We should respond with strength.
He is a hawk on military when it comes to fighting back against the Houthis. He's not that much of an isolationist, which I think separates him from a lot of libertarians.
But while I have you, Senator, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley vowing to stay in the presidential race even after losing to former President Donald Trump in the New Hampshire primary on Tuesday.
Most Americans do not want a rematch between Biden and Trump.
But I think it's not getting through to the former ambassador. So I'm considering today changing it from never Nikki to never ever Nikki, because I think it needs to be a little more explicit.
And she has to get out. And she's everything wrong with the finances. I agree with him saying, like, she might be a nice lady and everything. This isn't personal. This is about your politics are a disaster. And she needs to get out.
To see how big the problem is, realize that the tax revenue that comes into the federal government is spent on entitlements. Everything else is borrowed. So entitlements are Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, and a few other items that go on and on and on. That's 2/3 of our spending. That's how much comes in taxes, just enough for that. And this is my gripe with some Republicans as well. The people say, oh, we're going to take entitlements off the table, and some Republicans have been snipping back at it forth each other in the presidential campaign. Without question, you have to look at entitlements. If you don't, you're not a serious person. And before you know it, we're going to be so far behind the 8 ball that we will not be able to escape this without a calamity. The sooner we act on entitlements, the easier the glide path to fixing them.
Now, this is the biggest thing I want you guys to weigh in on, because I have a ton of people in retirement in my audience. In the comments below, would you ever lower your personal entitlement to reduce the debt? Because Rand Paul has conducted that survey. I've seen him do it before for the last 20 something years. And no Republican or conservative would ever raise their hand to take less of an entitlement to pay down the debt. And that's the problem. That's why it's a losing issue. You cannot be a Republican or Democrat and run on cutting entitlements and still win an election because it's so unpopular. Everyone goes like, look, I paid into the system. Do not cut my entitlements. I'm Doug in Exile.